The Minutemen are probably one of, if not my favorite bands of all time, and I honestly have no idea why I fucking love them so much. Maybe it's because they're short songs, short-ish albums, groovy songs and riffs. I don't know. All I know is that it took me forever to really understand the Minutemen. Like, it was just a moment where it just clicked. I remember the exact scenario I was in when I first put on the punchline. I was on the second part of Decibel, going the flank route to the second point, and I was playing Class Wars because of fucking course I was. Now, the guitarist and bassist D. Boone and Mike Watt were friends ever since the age of 13, and they both had a passion for music, so their parents got them a guitar and bass, even though Watt didn't even know what the fuck a bass was, and then would start playing highly out of tune, cacophonous messes, as they didn't even know how to tune the damn things. Also, do note, I'm kind of awful at this history thing, so I may be wrong about a few things. Please correct me in the comments. Boone, Mike, and Boone's brother Joe later formed Bright Orange in 1973, and the band disbanded in 1976 with the death of Boone's mother. They then joined Starstruck a year later, and then they disbanded, and then the two met George Hurley, and then formed the Reactionaries, which also had Martin
Tamborovich
on vocals. Oh, and guess what? They disbanded as well. So Boone and Watt later formed the Minutemen in 1980 with no drummer. Then they rehearsed and played a few gigs with Frank Taunch on drums. Then he left because of how the band always drew a negative audience, and then George Hurley joined the band. With their first gig being an opening act for Black Flag, they had a pretty good relationship with them. And Greg Ginn, guitarist of Black Flag and owner of SST, decided to sign the band to his label, alongside producing their first 7-inch, Paranoid Time, in 1980, which is also the second ever record released on SST. Paranoid Time is one of my favorite EPs of all time, as it has some really short tracks, fun riffs, shit production, and of course Paranoid chant. The band dabbles in many things: funk, jazz, hardcore punk, even prog at some points. This is a unique sound that honestly no other band can even replicate. Not even Watt's later bands could pull this off. All of these songs as well are memorable and great. Validation is an amazing fast-paced opener for the record, which goes right into the slower-paced The Maze, showing off Watt's skills in terms of playing bass. Definition starts slow, ends big, sort of reminds me of Flood minus part 4. Also, it's condensed to like 1 fucking minute. Sickles and Hammers is an instrumental that shows the talent of all the band members really well, and is just such an infectious track to listen to. Fascist has another gorgeous bass line and is probably my favorite on the EP, I'm gonna be honest. Joe McCarthy's Ghost slows things down just a little bit again, which goes right into Paranoid Chant, which has one of my favorite lines of all time: "I try to talk to girls and I keep thinking of World War III. The lyrics on this album mostly targets political issues like how politicians don't listen to anyone on the maze, a world under control of a fascist party on fascist... No fucking way, really? The EP has a ton of humor on it, but mixes well with the lyrics about truly serious problems at the time. And it's really well done. These lyrics are really intellectual, and honestly, you know, for a punk band, this is fucking impressive. This is unique. No one has done this before. At this point, you can already tell that they had already found their signature sound and style that gets beer cans thrown at them on stage.
We're doing it without 2 strings. Is that punk enough for you guys spitting? I gotta see your band, alright?
And because of that, they had made the 3-minute EP Joy in 1981. With 3 tracks, and just kind of feels like a continuation of Paranoid with much cleaner production. The EP was produced by Mike Patton, not that one, and was released on New Alliance Records, the label Boone and Watt formed alongside former Reactionaries vocalist Tamborovich. Some bands that you may recognize that were on this label are The Descendants, Husker Du, Slovenly, Dose, and our Lord and Savior, The Bootstrappers. Now, back to Joy. There's 3 tracks on here: Joy, Black Sheep, and More Joy. They're a little bit longer than anything seen on Paranoid Time, and maybe a little bit twangier, but it still feels like the Minutemen, and it doesn't divert from what they established on the previously released record. Joy and More Joy are about... well, I'd fucking hope they're about joy. And Black Sheep is about, well... I actually can't tell if this is about standing out like a black sheep or some religious, political commentary. Probably both. I'm not intellectual enough to go this deep into a Minutemen song. Black Sheep, by the way, incredible song. Such an addicting structure to it. The riffs and bass lines are phenomenal. Everything just works so well with each other, and I highly urge anyone to listen to Joy if you haven't already. It's only like 3 minutes. Get off your ass and listen to it right now. After Paranoid Time had sold out its original 300-copy run, Ginn later wanted to record the band yet again, and then the band later made their first full-length, oh, barely a full-length, The Punchline in 1981. it was released on SST and produced by Spot, the producer who did Damaged, Milo Goes to College, Zed Motherfucking Arcade, Meat Puppet Stew, Saint Vitus, Earth AD, The Crucifix. This guy has got quite a portfolio. Back on the topic of Minutemen, The Punchline, a 15-minute record that feels a lot more refined than their previous EPs with much more memorable tracks, songs that are usually below 1 minute. Seriously, only Tension and Games are over 1 minute, and just barely. And this is where I give up about talking songs one by one, as there's just too many to fucking talk about here. The album opens up with Search, which is a personal favorite Minutemen song for me, and it just works flawlessly as an opener. The harsh bass flows well alongside the twangy guitar with the really fucking awesome drum work. Seriously, this is the track that made me a Minutemen fan. Then it flows flawlessly into a more slower paced track, Tension, then right back up with Games. The pacing of the album just feels natural, and sure, it's not like a fucking concept album or like a fucking opera, but it just feels pleasant to hear. And when a very fast, chaotic track like Games flows perfectly into Boiling, which is more bass and drum centric at a slower tempo, not only are the tracks just perfect on how they flow, but also they're just memorable. The Struggle, Monuments, Song for El Salvador, History Lesson, Fanatics, Ruins, all tracks that any one person will memorize just after a few listens of the record. The band later started work on their next full length, but then it just kept getting delayed, so randomly in 1982 they dropped the Bean Spill EP. It's just sort of a taste of what their next record would be. Some tracks like Split Red would appear on their next album, but you can see their evolution as musicians from The Punchline to now. There's more of a jazzy, funky element to this than anything they've done previously, and that says a lot because their previous records have already done a ton of those elements. There's not really much to talk about this record. I barely remember it other than Split Red and Case Closed, but I guess it just shows off how good of a guitarist Boone is. Also that Watt sings on more tracks than Boone, I guess. I don't know. In '83, we finally got What Makes a Man Start Fires, done by the same people, and Bob Dylan wrote Propaganda Song! Dude, this song is fucking awesome. Such an iconic bass line, incredible lyrics, I fucking love it. Great way to introduce someone to the band and the album. Here, the songs are a lot longer, slower, more complex, and the album as a whole just feels a whole heap longer, but not in a bad way. In fact, I think it's to the benefit of the album, as songs feel like they don't blend in with each other as much as they did on The Punchline. Don't get me wrong, The Punchline is an incredible record, but here it feels like there's a lot more legroom for the songs, and it just feels like they were able to fully realize what the songs wanted to be here. Don't get me wrong, there's still the faster tracks like One Chapter in the Book, 99, The Only Minority, and Pure Joy, but generally, yet again, it's slower than usual. Despite how tracks are more fleshed out here, there's just some tracks that I don't really remember, like Flight, Tin Roof, and Colors. Maybe it's just a me thing, but I just feel like that this album isn't as memorable as The Punchline. But to an average Joe who may not give a fuck about this stuff, they may enjoy this album much more than their previous works. There's not really much else for me to say about this album other than it being just a perfect evolution from their previous works, other than maybe, I don't know, I just really like the album artwork. Seriously, I fucking love all the artwork that Pettibone has done, for Black Flag to Minutemen to Sonic Youth, all that. He's such an incredible artist. In 1983, we later got the Buzzer Howl Under the Influence of Heat EP, which, fun fact, is longer than their first full-length, which is basically the transition from their last record to their next. There's a lot more conventional and arguably more creative and unique songs here. Self-reference feels like everything we've heard from their previous record, but then there's Cut, a weirdly sort of not really more experimental track compared to the rest, about like budget cuts or some shit. I don't fucking know. With it going into something that sounds like it came out of their last record, but with a little more jazz influence on it. Dreams Are Free, Motherfuckers, a fully improvised track that sounds like what the Bootstrappers would become. The Toe Jam reminds me of that one track from Goo by Sonic Youth, but shorter and a lot jazzier. Take a shot for the amount of times I say jazz. I felt like a gringo. Dude, this song is fucking iconic. Like, this is probably the standout track on the EP. It's like some funk rock, jazz, whatever the fuck song about a white guy being in Mexico or something that's actually fucking hilarious. The product has Boone essentially abusing his guitar with some trumpets in the background, and him talking about capitalism or something, I don't fucking know. Little Man with a Gun in His Hand reminds me of Copper by Shellac and maybe a little bit of Padded Cell by the Mentally Ill, but a little more accessible to the average Joe. And also, it's just a great song. Probably the longest song the band has done, clocking at 3 minutes and 12 seconds at this point. And then it ends. Great EP, highly recommend. Hey there, post-production Fez here. I would just like to mention that this album was recorded in a different way. I could be wrong completely, as this is going off of fucking bullshit I found on Wikipedia, but this album was recorded completely live on a fucking 2-track. I am dead serious. Whereas all of their other albums were, I believe, recorded on a 16-track using overdubs, kind of like the method that other bands would use. This album was recorded Steve Albini style, where everything was done live. Although I thought the Minutemen have always been live. I don't know. I apparently they're not. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I just thought this was a little bit of a neat touch to add on to this, alongside their new producer that I can't remember the name of. Ethan James. Fuck, I'm an idiot. They then released The Politics of Time, which is just a compilation album of live recordings, demos, all of that. I don't know. I never gave a fuck about this comp. It kind of sucked ass, I'm gonna be honest. But then Husker Du released Zen Arcade in 1984. Now here you asking, what the fuck does this have to do with the Minutemen? Well, not only was it on the same label as the Minutemen, it also was a double LP and was one of the first concept albums in punk history. The band saw this and decided, why can't we do the same? And then they made their next album a double LP. It doesn't have a running concept other than cars. I'm dead fucking serious, by the way. However, it was longer and arguably even better, depending on the kind of person who's listening to it. They made Double Nickels on the Dime in 1984 with producer Ethan James as sort of like a response to their friendly rivalry with Husker Du. And holy fucking shit, this album is phenomenal. Seriously, this is one of the most well-done double albums, let alone punk albums I've heard in my entire fucking life. Anxious Mofo gets you in the mood for the album alongside just being an amazing fucking opener. Theater is the life in you, starting off slow and mellow before catching up into a weird jazz-type shenanigan before turning into some funk shit, and then going right into Vietnam. Vietnam, motherfucker. Vietnam. This album is a never-ending waterfall of just utter fucking classics. The 3 tracks I just mentioned, Cohesion, fuck it, all of side 1. And then there's Political Song from Michael Jackson to sing, Maybe Partying Will Help, God Blows That Math, The Glory of Man, motherfucking Corona. There's a reason why Corona is that one Minutemen song everyone knows while not knowing who the Minutemen are. Back to what makes this album chock full of classics. It's chock full of classics. I think the only bad part of this album is the final side, where you can kind of clearly see that's where they just put all the leftover tracks, but 3 out of 4 is still 75% great. Make that 85% because the final side still has some phenomenal tracks, like Jesus and Tequila and The Love Dance. None of the side 4 tracks are bad, mind you. Just that, yeah, this was not the part of the album that the band really cared for. And then it ends with 3 Car Jam, a little nod to their first track, D's Car Jam. This album is a fucking must listen, even with side 4. It's all fucking incredible. I cannot put into words how fucking good this album is. I'd argue it's better than anything Radiohead, Kendrick Lamar, and even Pink Floyd had put out. I don't get how a human being can make something this fucking good. Honestly, it's the perfect album. The writing goes from honestly really fucking funny concepts to actual political messages that need to be said, like how advertising is fucking retarded. Production too is honestly amazing, especially for a punk album. All the instruments stand out alongside just sounding great. And you know, I could go on and on about how fucking amazing this album is, but I'd like to keep this video shorter than the average Minutemen album, so we'll have to move on to Project Mersh. Released in 1985, produced by Joe Carducci, I hope I pronounced that right, I'm very sorry. Some people may say this is where the Minutemen died, and I say that you're bloody wrong. This is sort of where you can hear the transition from classic Minutemen to Firehose, which we'll get onto a little bit later. But this EP is still a damn fine good one. The tracks are kind of longer than usual, the EP is longer than all of the Punchline. It's also a little bit more commercial than usual, with tracks being longer than 2 minutes, having standard song structures, and fade outs. What? Thanks, Wikipedia. This probably was done to make fun of bands who sold out and wrote popular songs meant to be hits. Although I think it's weird to listen to a Minutemen song that's longer than like 18 fucking seconds. Dude, these songs are fucking killer. Cheerleaders sounds like music I could fuck to. King of the Hill was sort of the hit of the album, and it reminds me a lot of Vietnam, but as a royalty-free version. Hey Lottie Mama sounds like some country type shit. I don't fucking know how to explain this shit. Take Our Test reminds me a little bit of a blend between Vamos by the Pixies and like any Firehose or later Husker Du song. Tour Spill is like any hit pop rock song from what was coming out at the time, with that little Minutemen flavor to it. And More Spiel is like the previous but longer and with synthesizers. Honestly, not a bad EP, and I highly suggest anyone listen to it. Sure, it's a little more commercial, but it wasn't to make money, rather more as a satirical piece. And then shit hit the fan. In 1985, the band would release Three-Way Tie for Last. People shit on this album a lot. I don't really see why. It's essentially what Firehose would become, but also with a lot more cover tracks. Like, Jesus, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? There's like 5 or 6 on this album alone. I've never actually heard this album much, so take what I say with a grain of salt, but this album isn't as bad as people say. It's just the worst Minutemen album by a fucking mile. The album's kind of forgettable in the sea of covers and not really memorable tracks. I don't know. It could really just be a me thing, but like I said, it's not bad. Far from it. I just don't fucking care. It's got some weird jazz shit near the end, I guess, and what I only assume is some workout tape on top. What? Some workout tape on top of someone ripping from a bong on the second side? I don't know what the fuck I know what I'm talking about here. Yeah, there's that final track that has someone ripping a bong while watching a fucking workout video. I don't know, I literally don't fucking care. I urge anyone to listen to it if you're a diehard Minutemen fan. There's just nothing to really hear that's interesting. You're better off with Firehose, Husker Du, or fuck man, even REM. Then right after this album released, on December 22nd, 1985, Boone had passed away in a van accident in Arizona at the age of only 27 years old. The band later broke up, however, they did release a couple of records. 1 year earlier, the Minutemen and Black Flag had collaborated together to create the 4-track EP, Minute Flag, and it released in 1986, and it kinda sucked dick, I'm gonna be honest. It's like a weird improvised jam band between the two groups. I don't know, I just think it isn't that good at all. A neat record, sure, but there's nothing really special about it other than being a pretty neat experimental collaboration album. I'd suggest sticking with later Black Flag or fuck man, even the Bootstrappers. In 1987, Ballot Result was released, which was a live album with a ton of bits and pieces from 1980 to 1985, having some pretty good live shows alongside some unreleased material that was made fucking impossible to find thanks to SST being SST. Yeah, that's it. It's just a live album. I just kinda really like it. The band had officially broken up right when Boone had passed away, despite these 2 records, and because of it, the band essentially became Firehose with new guitarist Ed Crawford, and essentially went more away from punk into more of an alternative rock, and shit man, Firehose is fucking great. Ragin' Full On, Iffin, From Ohio, all great fucking albums, and I think everyone must listen to these if you're an alternative rock fan. Bands sort of stumbled a little bit with Flying the Flannel, as that was a major label release, and they kind of fell all over themselves with Mr. Machinery Operator, but none of these are bad records, except Mr. Machinery. That album just didn't feel like a Firehose album at all. Watt had also joined the Bootstrappers in 1989, which are like an experimental improvised jazz rock band, and I think they're better than all of Minute Flag. There was, as well, Unknown Instructors in the same vein as the Bootstrappers, but also had Hurley on drums, and I never actually really listened to these guys before other than like a song or two. Felt a lot like the Bootstrappers to me at least. And then fuck man, I don't know what else to talk about now. I guess that there was Jackass, which used Corona as its theme song, and I think that's all I really need to talk about. I'll probably expand upon what I've said about Firehose and the Bootstrappers another day, maybe, I don't know. This video is long enough as is. If I missed anything or was incorrect at all, please mention it in the comments. I'd like to be fully corrected about something I've said, rather than left to believe to be right about something that's completely false. Anyways, you should listen to the Minutemen.